So I've never done an interview in a field before.
Me either.
What is this? What's this field that we're in here?
Well, we're in the corner of one of our alfalfa fields
Okay.
here in beautiful Moses Lake, Washington. It's nice and sunny out today. I mean, minus a little bit of clouds. It's a little dark right now, but about the first sunny day we've had in 5-6 days.
You guys have kind of been battling the weather.
Yeah. Mother Nature has definitely decided that she isn't too happy. I don't know if she just got cooped up with Corona for too long, or what the deal is. But she decided she was gonna make it known that she's still around. She hasn't left, so we're rolling with the punches, and we'll see what happens.
So you guys grow hay. Is that pretty much it? You're just a hay operation?
Yeah, we're just a forage operation. So minus 100 acres of corn actually.
Okay.
That we just planted this year. We're just using it kind of as a rotational crop. Just kind of give our soil a little break on alfalfa or grass. So we got about minus the trucks driving by.
Just wave. Hey.
Yeah. We got probably about 1,300 acres of total crop, and that's all forages. So we try to, of course, get the highest quality we can out of our crop, and most of it we shoot for kind of export quality. So we try to make the best product that we can with what we got and where we're kind of set up. So that's kind of where that's at.
So what does export quality mean?
Export quality is just, kind of it all varies. I mean, exporters take a wide variety of stuff. There's a need for supreme, premium, feeder, dairy. It kind of depends on and what they're kind of looking for. So it's kind of broad, but we just try, of course, for the highest quality. Most everybody tries for the highest quality. But like we were kind of talking about earlier is about 95% of our product goes for export, compared to some guys that just shoot for the domestic market, and like local retail sales or anything like that. Our biggest thing is we take it, we sell it to an exporter, and they ship it overseas to wherever their customers are, what they need.
So what happens to that hay then?
After we put it in the stack, or put it into a bale, put it in the stack, they will come and buy it, haul it into their pressing facility. There's a bunch of pressing facilities located in Ellensburg, which is about an hour and change away from here, or there's some local pressers here, or Tri-Cities, just kind of all around the state. So they'll take it, they'll press it down to whatever package the customer wants, and then they'll put it in a shipping container and ship it where it needs to go. So whether that's Japan, Saudi Arabia, UAE, China, pretty much all over the world.
So pressing it, that's like I think people are familiar with like a hay bale.
Yeah. Yep.
And there's small bales. I think that's what most people would be familiar with, which are like,
yay big. Yeah.
And then there's a little bit bigger ones than that. There's also big bales, like actually are on the bales behind the camera, so people can't see that.
Yeah.
But so which ones are you actually sent? And they take bales and just like squish them down that much farther?
Yeah, there's actually a bunch of different packages that they can do. So they'll take a 3 foot by 4 foot by 8 foot long bale, and compress it down. They can do a half cut, a sleeve bale. They can do a double compressed, single compressed. There's a ton of different package, that they can do to get it down to, for the most part, most of it'll go about to a package about yay big, which is like I think a 50 kg package, and they'll stack them all in the shipping containers, and then that's how they get it over there. So yeah.
What are all these planes flying around here? Good grief.
Yeah, we're pretty close to the airport, and the military enjoys flying over and interrupting super important interviews that are happening right now.
See.
Yeah.
So they hear when a podcast is happening.
That's right. Yeah. They hear when you're trying to sleep. They hear when important stuff's happening. Yeah.
They quick scramble some cargo planes.
That's right.
Interrupt.
Yeah. No. All kidding aside, no. They fly around all day, every day. So we actually get to see some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
Fighter jets flew over earlier today, and nothing says America more like some fighter jets flying over. But yeah, no, it kind of is all dependent on what the overseas customer wants for a package. And it all depends on what they're using it for too.
So those bales that you're squeezing down, how much do they weigh?
Initially,
yeah.
When we get them in our bales, they can be anywhere from, I don't know, probably a little over 1,000 pounds to 1,300 pounds, 1,400 pounds. All kind of depends on
over a half ton of hay.
Yeah.
And then they squeeze that down into, like, what's the smallest that they can squeeze that down into?
Oh man, you're asking me a bunch of tough questions. I probably should know this. If any,
just roughly,
if any of our buyers watch this, I'm sorry. Like, I apologize. I've been doing this long enough. I probably should know, but today is one of those days. I think the smallest package is probably a 50 kilogram.
Okay.
I think.
Okay, so they actually like break the bales up into smaller pieces.
So what they'll actually do is, they'll take the bale, they'll cut all the strings off of it, they'll put it into their thing, and they'll slice it, and then they'll take and put it in the press, and hydraulic rams take and push it all together, pops out, and it's magical. It's magic. Nobody knows how it works.
And then they feed it to their animals wherever they are in the world.
Yeah, and then they'll take and, like I said, put it in a shipping container, and that's kind of what they do.
So what's the key to making really good animal feed? Hay.
Mother Nature cooperating in the best way possible. It all kind of depends. I mean, weather's a big thing. Nutrition's a big thing. Just paying attention to what you got for crops, paying attention to water and fertilizer, nutrient plans, things like that, and just management is pretty much the biggest thing. And then hopefully Mother Nature plays nice with you.
So a lot of your nutrients for your hay actually comes from manure?
They can. It all depends. So it all depends on the grower's program too.
Yeah.
There's something to be said about manure, especially for alfalfa or things like that. Dry fertilizer, liquid fertilizer is kind of the general thing. So, but that's kind of where that comes from. So, or liquid manure. Some people do that too.
Yeah.
So it all kind of depends on grower preference. So everyone kind of has what works for them.
So the manure that you would fertilize the crops with comes from where?
It depends on kind of where you get it from. I mean, there's a bunch of dairies up here, if you want liquid manure. There's also a bunch of feedlots, so we can get screen steer manure for, pretty readily available, So it all kind of depends on who and what and why and what the price is.
And then irrigation too. You've got to like water all of these, alfalfa and grasses that you grow.
Yeah. So luckily for us, we're on the Columbia Basin Irrigation Project, so we have surface water available, so we can go up and fire on a switch, get the pivots going, and we're good to go. We do have some wheel lines, we got some hand lines, but nothing too major. So it's pretty nice to be able to flip it on and just have kind of consistent water all the way across. So.
Yeah, that's a lot better than hand lines, which for people who aren't familiar with that, and I learned that at a young age, the joy of changing hand line, which is the actual pipes, and you pick them up 1 20 or 30 foot pipe at a time, move it over however many feet you're going, 30 feet, whatever the next section of the main line is from the riser.
Yep.
If that makes sense to anybody, I don't know, but that's a lot of work. I'm surprised you guys still. What is that? Just if you have like a corner of a field or something?
Yeah, we actually just have one field that is just like 2 corners that we water with hand lines, and then I think we have 2 or 3 sets of wheel lines, which is the same concept, except luckily it has a motor on it, so you can roll it. Roll it and park it. But pivots. I mean, because the other thing about pivots is they're efficient. So they're efficient on water. They're efficient on water pattern, and they cover ground. One thing about pivots, one downfall is there's a little more to fix.
So pivots are these things that if you're flying over farm country, you see the circles, and that's where people talk about farming a circle.
Yep.
And then the irrigation, basically the water comes up in the middle of the circle, and then there's the big framework that goes out with all the sprinklers on it, and it just kind of goes around.
Yep.
How long does it take for one of those to go around a circle?
It all depends. I mean, if it were to go full hog on 120 38. I mean, it all depends on machine too.
Yeah.
Say just a standard pivot could take 7 hours, 6 hours, go 130 acres all the way around, complete revolution. But it all depends on there's different gearboxes too. So different gearboxes, different center drives that you could actually make. There's one company that actually makes center drives and gearboxes that actually doubles the speed. It's constantly moving. So it can actually cover, when normally it'd take like 7 hours, it'd cover it in like 4.
So they don't normally constantly move, like they move a little bit, sprinkle, and then move a little bit more and kind of keep going around the circle?
They still move, but it's kind of all in succession. So the end tower is the lead tower, kind of takes off, and second one follows, and then it'll stop for a little bit, let it all catch back up, and kind of stay in a line.
So the pieces move separately.
Yes.
Wow.
Out on the end. So technically your last tower moves further than your first tower, because it's closer to the center point.
When you're driving by, you see way more water coming out of the outside sprinklers oftentimes than the inside ones.
Yeah, and it also has more ground to cover too. So the inside ones have less, so the nozzles are smaller because they don't need to put as much water down. So your outside ones are going to be a whole lot, put a whole lot more water down in that span.
This is all new to me because I grew up around farming, but it was in Western Washington, and we don't do that there.
Right.
I mean, there are just a few pivots over on that side of the mountains.
Mother Nature cooperates with you guys, yeah.
Well, but and the fields are way smaller too,
right?
And so people will use hand line or wheel line or big guns or drip irrigation or just hope and pray for rain at the right time, not the wrong time.
Yeah.
So is that growing hay, is that the biggest challenge? Is just trying to get the rain when you want it and the dry, hot weather, because that's what you need to like dry the hay out after you cut it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that's probably about 92% of the challenge is just weather. I mean, it can take a good crop and turn it into pretty bad, pretty quick. So
what does it do to it?
So for alfalfa especially, it'll take, and if it rains on it enough, it'll actually start washing nutrients out of it. So not only will it start bleaching it and cause it to lose color, which is kind of a portion of how customers buy it, it'll actually start washing the nutrients out of the plant. So your RFV will go down, your digestible nutrients will go down, your all that kind of stuff that buyers or dairies and stuff want to see is,
the most
that nutrient value.
Most nutrition for their animals to eat.
Yeah, so it kind of, takes away on that. On grass, especially on Timothy. So Timothy is very, it's bought on color, a little bit on feed value depending on where it goes and stuff like that. But it's primarily bought on color and look and things like that. So you get, a little bit of rain on it and, here we are, you're turning into a product where it's automatically a lower grade, and it can go from premium to number 1, number 2 quality in a matter of a couple hours.
Wow.
So a little shot of rain.
And what's the
depends.
What's the value difference, like percentage wise? How much money can you lose in a couple hours with the wrong rain?
I mean, you could lose probably about 50%. So, about half its value. You could just sit there and watch, as it trickles off the windshield, and it all depends. Everything has a home, but everything has a home for a certain price too. So,
when I was a kid, both of my grandpas, grandparents, because they both ran the farms, grandpa and grandma, had dairy farms, and my one grandpa in particular, my dad's dad, was very much into feeding his cows alfalfa almost exclusively, other than other nutrients, but he didn't do like silage or local hay or anything. He got Eastern Washington alfalfa from here, and he would come out and like look at the field, and he wanted to know that he was getting the best stuff for his cows, and this is where he would come. You talk about Timothy though, like what are they feeding with Timothy? That's not going to be like for dairy cows, right?
Yeah,
it can be.
It can be, yeah.
Part of their TMR.
Yeah, they'll
ration?
take and put it in their mixed ration. A lot of dairies in China will take it, Japan, things like that. But Timothy kind of has a wide use.
I think of like feeding horses when I think of Timothy.
Right. Yeah.
That's my experience with it.
Horses, race horses are kind of the biggest, everybody's like, oh, they feed it to race horses. That's correct. But they also feed it to camels, guinea pigs, gerbils, anything like that. Any kind of animal, they'll eat it. I mean, it's pretty good. So, that's kind of, it all depends. Like I said, it kind of all depends on what customer's taking it and then, how they want to use it and things like that.
So have you gotten the chance to visit any of these customers out around the globe?
No.
See where the hay goes to? I think that would be really fascinating.
No, so kind of segueing into that. So currently, we're part of the Washington State Hay Growers Association, as you might be able to tell behind me. Shameless plug, it's fine. So I'm current vice president, and then our current president actually went overseas here last year and visited a bunch of the dairies and stuff and things like that. So at some point that'll probably be on the docket, maybe once all this, maybe 2021, 22, 25. Who knows when this Corona deal gets over.
Someday you'll get to go
someday.
See it.
But yeah, no, and we've been doing this. We've been doing this a while, so we've kind of, we've met some of the customers when they come here, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, we like your guys' product, or we like this, or we like that. Can we see that?" So that makes us feel good because we're like, okay, we have repeat customers, not just people buying directly from us, but people that are buying, through us technically. Right. So.
I always thought it was impressive that my grandpa would come all the way, a dairy farmer from Western Washington would come all the way over to Eastern Washington to check out his hay.
Yep.
A little bit more impressive if you come all the way, say, from China to check out your hay. But I guess that's how important it is to them to get good quality. It's worth the trip.
Yeah, no. And they take, and they trust the buyers, they trust the exporters on what product they're getting them. But they also like to come put eyes on it because things kind of change when you actually put eyes on it. You can send pictures, you can make it, look pretty. But at the end of the day, if you put eyes on it and you're like, oh, I don't really like this part of the bale, or I don't really like that head size, or I don't like, there's not enough leaf, there's too much stem, they're super thin, they're brittle, there's a million things that, they can pick apart and be like, well, we want it for this price. Or, oh, this looks really good, we want it for a little higher. So
they'll actually say that?
No.
Yeah,
we hope they do. Yeah. But,
You're probably going to come in and say, hey, this is awesome. Hey, here's the price.
Yeah,
and they're going to say, will you take 25% less than that? And you'll be like,
Yeah.
How much negotiating goes on with this kind of stuff?
Oh, I mean, the exporters sit there constantly and negotiate about it. Yeah. They'll offer it out and they'll see what they say, and they'll do probably 3 or 4 counter offers and see what happens. I mean, it all depends. We just sold some today that, they offered out a couple times and 3 or 4 or 5 negotiations, middle of the night because, time difference. And
yeah, true.
They're like, hey, here's what we got. Like, this is the product. Here's where we need to be at. Here's where my grower needs to be at. Here's where I need to be at to make some money. Here's where you got to be, and see if it kind of fits in where they're thinking.
So how many acres are you guys growing hay on?
We have 1,300 acres, and then we do another probably 1,300 acres worth of custom work. So total for last year, we covered probably 8,500 acres.
Wow.
For the entire year after, all 4 cuttings of alfalfa,
right.
2 cuttings of Timothy. Acres. Yeah.
So custom work meaning what?
We go and we work with another custom guy, and we'll actually go cut, and then he'll rake it and bale it because the farm that has the ground doesn't have the equipment to do it.
I see.
So they just contract hire it out, and we go and do that.
So that's like half of the acres you cover is custom work?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty much. It kind of varies a little bit depending on what their rotation's at, but for the most part, that's kind of where we're at. So yeah, it keeps us busy. The machine's not rolling; it's not paying for itself. So
that's true.
Employees aren't cheap. Labor's not cheap. Fuel's not cheap. Equipment definitely isn't cheap. So you gotta supplement a little bit. but it also keeps, it definitely keeps us busy. So,
how did you guys get into this?
Farming as a whole,
or hay farming specifically?
Or
did you not always do hay farming, or what's the family background?
So family background, technically I say I'm second generation hay farmer.
Yeah.
My grandpa, he had the ground. He used to work kind of odd job. I mean, he did anything and everything. He was a fireman. He was a lumberjack. He was a quality control specialist somewhere. I mean, he's done a multitude of things. And he ended up with farm ground. So he kind of farmed a little bit, but my dad pretty much started the place. But he used to work for another hay grower here in the local area, and he worked for him for 25 years. And then things just kind of weren't working out, so he decided, hey, I'm gonna try to go do this on my own. So, like I said, my grandpa had some ground, and my dad said, hey, I want to start farming. So they started with about 200 acres, pretty much right, kind of where we're sitting at right now. And since then, and that was probably 11 years ago. And since then we've grown from 200 acres to 1,400.
Wow.
With, I don't know, five or six employees probably total by the time you get, through everything. So, yeah, it was pretty much my dad. He's been around hay for a long time. So, I mean, he's been around hay for, do some quick mental math, it'd be 34 years he's been around hay. So
when did
35.
When did you start farming?
Yeah, so, born into it, so that's
Yeah.
always good. They say the biggest challenge is with family farming is putting up with your family. You love your family, you do, but it takes a special kind of nutcase to want to willingly come and work together, right?
Yeah.
You butt heads every once in a while, 95% of the time. But you make it work. So I was working here just summers and stuff like that, doing normal farm tasks and things like that. And then I reached a point where I was done. I didn't want to farm. I thought farming was probably one of the worst things I could do, which is
really?
bad. Which is bad to say because it. I have a little.
And the wind is blowing our microphone over.
Here, we'll do that. So I was like, no, I can't do this. I can't work with family. I'm not going to farm. I don't like it. It's terrible. Blah blah blah.
This was when you were how old?
I was about 18.
Yeah.
So it was kind of it was time.
It's kind of a key time.
Yeah.
To be making some decisions.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm going to go do something else. And my parents were supportive, and they were like, okay, yeah, do what you want. So I applied to go to school at the University of Oregon in Eugene, and took them about a month and a half to get back to me. And I had a couple other offers, a couple other places to do random things. I thought I was going to do engineering and thought I was going to do this, and then realized that's a whole lot of math and a whole lot of thinking that my brain couldn't handle.
I'm not smart enough for that. That's for sure. I'll be the first to admit.
Yeah, so I'm just like, no, let's not do that. So I waited and waited and waited. Got into the University of Oregon. Didn't know what I wanted to do. Went down there. Had 2 years left. I had already got my associate's degree from local community college, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I got down there. I ended up signing up for some journalism classes, and I was literally sitting in I think it was like a 201 class, so basic, first introductory class, that was like media studies. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, this advertising thing's not too bad. Like, it looks pretty good, So I was like, you know what? I'm going for it. So I ended up getting a degree in journalism communications with an emphasis in advertising. And then it got down to trying to find jobs. Pretty much everybody I went to school with got jobs at Nike, big old ad agencies, all this other stuff. And I'm just like...
They were in Oregon too, so yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, here I am. Like, what do I want to do?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, all right, well, I'll go back to the farm. Shouldn't be too bad. I got back here and I'm like, why did I leave?
Really? It was that a parent.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I enjoy the whole advertising world.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy all that kind of stuff. But I think
you got a fan club. That
yeah.
guy's driven by multiple times.
Yeah,
now. He wants to watch the podcast.
Yeah, the boss is driving around wondering what I'm doing.
That guy is the boss man.
Yeah,
AKA your dad.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't recognize him.
Yeah. No, I left, and that was kind of that. And so I came back, and I'm like, this is what I want to do. You know, I enjoy growing crop, and I enjoy doing this, and I enjoy doing that. So let's make it happen. You know, and ever since then, I've been back.
So what did your dad say? He was like,
he didn't say much.
And he was happy to have you come join the operation?
Yeah, he was happy. The first couple of years were a little rough. You know, we're just getting back into, you know, hey, you know, I went off and did this, so I know, you know.
Yep.
Not really, you know, completely, but it was just kind of, you know, one of those deals where it's like, hey, you know, how about we do it this way? How about we do it that way? Now we're at a decent spot. We're getting along a whole lot better. We make things work a whole lot better because we do have different views on how to do things, or we do have different thought processes when doing something. So I think that's one of the biggest things. But I'll tell anybody that if you're wanting to farm, especially with family or anything, go do something else and come back, because you learn a lot more when you're gone than when you're there. Because I think if you stick around, and this is kind of with any job, you know, wise words of wisdom with Andrew today. But, you know, I think this is with any job, is the fact that you get in a comfort zone. You get in a comfort zone in your life. You get in a comfort zone with your job. So you're like, oh, well, I don't have to change anything. And then you get out there and you experience different things. You experience different people and how they do things to get a certain task done. And you're like, hey, I'm going to try that. Like, oh, why don't I think about that? So I think getting somebody out of their comfort zone is the biggest thing for sure. So I think now the boss is staring at me. I think that's the biggest thing, is like, you know, is get out of your comfort zone. I think you learn more out of your comfort zone than you do in it. So that's kind of the biggest thing.
Anything specifically that you take away from your education that changes maybe how you do your work now? I mean, people think, well, it's a far cry from a communications degree.
Right. No, I think, I think it's shifting too. I think the push now is especially, is being active on, you know, social media and things like that, and showing our story. Like, we're not just some, you know, boy, I tell you what, we big old farmers here. Like, you know, we're actually doing a job that like takes a whole lot more than, okay, let it grow. You know, like even when I was explaining earlier, it's like, oh, we just put water on it. We put fertilizer on it. It's done. Yeah. Like, it's a little more than that.
Yeah.
It's not, somebody can do it, but it all depends on, you know, how and what. And so, no, I think the biggest thing is it's communication is, of course, the backbone of pretty much anything. I mean, communication is the backbone of, as the wind picks up a little bit.
Hey, but you hay people. You love wind, right?
I'm
Isn't this what makes your hay awesome?
For sure, yeah. No, I think communication, of course, is kind of the backbone of anything. Relationships, you know, negotiations for buyers, anything like that, or even relationships with field agronomists or things like that. So it kind of, it all comes down to it. But, you know, the biggest thing is, especially with like social media, is the fact that we have the opportunity and platform to share our story, right? So that's kind of the biggest thing for me, is it's allowing us as an operation to kind of showcase, hey, here's what we do. We're not saying it's perfect. We're not saying it's the best thing ever. We're not saying we're absolutely right. But here's what we do. Here's why we do it. Here's our thought process. Maybe somebody else will take it, or maybe somebody else will be like, hey, you know, why don't you try this? Or have you ever tried this? Or,
right.
You know, things like that. Like, I'll have growers reach out, you know, and be like, hey, what do you normally put down on your Timothy? Or what are you trying on your alfalfa? That looks really good, or things like that. And it gives me a certain sense of pride, and it gives us, well, not so much, you know, the social media mogul over there, that surfs Twitter all day, but, you know, it gives me a certain sense of pride, because it's like, hey, you know, here's what we're doing. Somebody's recognizing, hey, like that's pretty sweet. You know, I think, you know, we can do something. So I think, it just gives, it's a whole new avenue. You know, we can kind of market in a different way, and say, oh, you know, here's what we got. Here's showing you the inner workings of an alfalfa operation or a forage operation. So I think that's kind of cool. I mean, it's a challenge for sure. Here, you know, last week it was just raining. That was it. It was raining. And, you know, that takes a big old blow to, you know, our ego and our, you know, confidence, because, I mean, we are losing money. But in the grand scheme of things, it's not as tough as some of these other growers that, like, potato contracts that are currently, you know, were cut at the beginning of the year and things like that. Yeah. Like, they're the ones that are suffering super, you know, a lot. Yeah. You know, so that was kind of my point, is like, I know we show all the good stuff, but we're also human and we make mistakes. You know, so
yeah, you had a good video post about that on Instagram.
Yeah, it was one of those days where you just kind of had to let it out. You know what I mean? Like, you had to talk to somebody, and if there's nobody to talk to that wants to listen, you just talk to yourself, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest thing, is like, you know, yeah, it's tough, but we'll recover. And, you know, there's some growers out there that it is a big hit. You know, they can't absorb some of these things. You know, you start talking losing $100-$200 a ton, you know, well, probably about $100 a ton. That's a big deal. Yeah. You know, that's, I mean, the end of the day, that's a lot of money that we're talking about.
Yeah.
You know, and I have even talked to some potato growers in the local area. And one of the guys goes, I just put $4,000 an acre into potato ground, and I have to plant sweet corn or beans or peas, and I'm not going to make a single penny back from what I already put into it.
Yeah, he's not going to be able to make as much as they had already spent on it.
Yeah. And he goes, that's what I have to do. How am I going to make it work? I have no idea, but that's what it is, you know. So, you know, we get a little bit of rain. Yeah, it's a punch in the gut for sure. But especially when it's some of the best looking stuff that we had, that was ready to go right before it rained. But yeah, I think yeah.
Well, I thought your post was on point. Not just about farming, but about anybody on social media. That's kind of the phenomenon, right? Like, everybody just kind of shows the best part of their life.
Right.
And so it makes everybody else feel like, oh, my life sucks.
Right.
But the reality is everybody has a lot of crappy stuff in their life.
100%. I mean, right? and that's the thing, is like, you know, yeah. And I think that's one of the biggest what's the word I'm looking for? That's one of the biggest drawbacks of social media, but it's also one of the biggest points that we can start to address. Yeah. Is the fact that it may look all pretty and nice, and everybody, you know, the other side of the grass is greener on the other side of the fence.
Yep.
And you might want to start digging a little deeper. And I think that's my point, is like, we make mistakes. We're not perfect, you know. We have misapplications on, you know, chemical, or, you know, our crop doesn't grow or anything like that. Like, it happens. Or Mother Nature, you know, kicks us in the butt and says, you know, you were feeling good. Yeah, here you are. You know, here's a little slice of humble pie, right? So I think social media is a double-edged sword for sure. And I think the biggest challenge, nobody wants to share the bad stuff. Nobody wants to say, hey, I messed up. Like, as simple as that. Like,
because they're worried. Number one, they don't want to look dumb.
Right.
And number two, I mean, if you're doing business, you're worried that your customers are going to be like, I don't know if I trust them anymore.
Right. But I mean, and I think that's the biggest thing, is closing that gap between where customers and us are at, and getting people kind of closer. Because the thing about it is, like, even some of our overseas customers, they were like, oh, well, we've never actually seen alfalfa go in the bale.
Right.
How does that work?
Yeah.
I'm like, you know, here's some videos. Like, technology and all that kind of stuff is great nowadays. You know, you couldn't do that in the past. I mean, you could, but you'd have,
and as far as, like, admitting to things not going perfectly, with our generation, that's kind of what we're into. Like, we almost don't trust somebody where things are too perfect.
Right.
Because it's like, that's got to be fake.
Yeah. Or like, oh, that's not actual reality. Like, what is reality? So
reality is doing a podcast and having wind pick up.
That's right.
And jets fly over and people drive by.
That's right.
And people call you on the phone.
Yeah, and the boss working on equipment behind you.
Yeah. That's reality.
Back of the pickup's dirty. I mean, a whole bunch of stuff. But, you know, and I think that's the biggest thing is like, you know, I've had people say, hey, like, thanks for sharing the bad.
Yeah.
And I go, it's not even close to being terrible. Like, I can sit here and complain all day about what goes wrong, but you look at other things in the world and you're like, yeah, my life ain't that bad.
Well, you said it earlier, now you're saying it again, and that's something that farmers are really good at and it goes along with that farmer optimism. It's that, well, things could be worse. Vibe.
Yeah, until
farmers have to do that, otherwise you couldn't survive.
Oh yeah, we're the biggest pessimists you've ever met in your life. Like, no joke. We'll look at something and we'll be like, oh man, that's probably the worst quality stuff I've ever put up in my life.
But you're still an optimist because you're going to try for it.
But we'll be like, oh, that's terrible quality, and then somebody come by and be like, that's probably the best stuff I've looked at so far, and you're like, all right, cool. Like, you know, you can be an optimist and you'll end up being fine. But that's the thing is like, you reach a point where it kicks you in the shorts and you're like, I just want to go home and cry. Like, you know, I mean, it's fine if you go home and cry. No big deal. But it's also like one of those deals where it's like, you know, what can we do about it? There's nothing we can do about Mother Nature. If it's something that we messed up, we can fix it. Mother Nature comes through, it's out of our control. I mean, you can sit there and say however many Hail Marys you want, but it ain't going to matter, you know, about what's going on, you know. So, and the biggest thing, especially this year, is predictability on weather. There hasn't been any. I mean, it's been either 10% chance and it rains, or it's, you know, 70% chance and it's sunny.
Yeah.
It all kind of depends.
Such is the way of farming.
What's
been the hardest time for you so far farming? What's the most challenging thing?
Oh, man. Probably, I mean, one of the most challenging things is, of course, trying to juggle home life and farm life.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. You know, we put in long hours, you know, farmers put in long hours, dairy guys put in long hours, things like that. It's balancing how much you're working and how much you're at home. So, and also for me, so my wife works at the hospital. She's a labor and delivery nurse.
Okay.
And so she'll work nights and I work days.
Yeah. Never see each other.
And when she's working, I'm not working, and when she's not working, I'm working. So it just kind of, you know, we got 2 kids at home, so that's kind of the biggest thing. You know, I take them out and be like, hey, you know, we're gonna go check, like we're gonna go just drive around. You know, it gets them out of the house, but it also is like
daddy daycare and a pickup.
I gotta go work. Yeah. Like, here's some fruit snacks. We'll turn on, you know, some Frozen, and we'll be fine. But I've listened to my fair share of Frozen in this truck here. But it's really sad when you're off topic a little bit, when we're, you know, driving around and the kids aren't in the truck and the Frozen is still playing and you don't notice, and you're like, I really hope nobody pulls up. Like, let's turn on some AC/DC and get,
a little awkward. Other farmer guy shows up and you're listening to Frozen.
Yeah, I mean, it happens.
If it was from my household, it would be Bubble Guppies or Paw Patrol or something like that.
Yeah, probably mine too. Yeah. No, my kid, my kid definitely enjoys, enjoys.
Well, I grew up on the seat of a tractor myself. My dad was a custom farmer when I was quite young.
Right.
So I would ride along with Dad until he was doing something that was too rough to have a little kid. And, you know, like if he was ripping some rough ground or something with the tractor, and it's like, okay, Mom's going to come pick you up. You got to get out now.
Right.
I don't want you to whack your head on the steering wheel. Obviously, older tractor, less room, no actual buddy seat. It was just fold the armrest down.
Yeah.
And the old 40-240.
Yeah, the fender of the tractor, making sure you don't slip off onto the tire. Yeah. Been there. Yeah, been there many times with my dad. And I think that's the biggest thing is, like, you know, my wife and I talk a whole bunch. You know, I try to get home as you know, readily as I can. I try to, you know, balance that life. It is absolutely probably one of the hardest things I deal with. You know, getting our guys to, you know, do whatever and getting, you know, equipment fixed and things like that. I mean, that's, I hate to say it's easy, but it's just kind of a thing we do now.
Yep.
You know, it's a process for sure. So, yeah, I think the biggest thing is just finding that time.
And your busiest time is in the summertime when everybody else in the world says that's when we should be going on vacation.
Right.
That was my growing up too.
Yeah.
It was like, I grew up on a red raspberry farm. You harvest raspberries in July. You do not do anything else.
Right. Well, and
you certainly don't even mention going on vacation.
Oh, yeah,
that would be blasphemy.
No, yeah.
Even though you can get vacations in between cuttings.
Yeah,
maybe,
yeah.
sometimes.
I mean, we can sneak away for a little while. I mean, I'm going on vacation next week, but that's beside the point. We were planning on being done, for full disclaimer. I mean, not that it really matters, but But one of the biggest things is that, everybody's like, oh, well, you just take the weekend off, right? Sure, I could.
Right.
But everything's still going to be growing. Like, it don't matter. Like, if the weather's right, we're doing it. Like, we're going, we're farming. Simple as that. And I think the best description, and I think most people have probably seen this floating around, is like the dad and the son. Like, oh, what is this? Oh, I don't know, son. Well, it's the same thing with farming. Is like, hey, Dad, what's a weekend? I don't know, son. We're farmers. Like, it's just like, that's probably the best description I can have, because that's the way it is. 4th of July. What are holidays, right? What are weekends? People are like, oh, did you make it there? What day is it? Oh, Saturday. Oh, well, no. Like,
oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, and then you
I
get
saw it on
point,
social media the next day.
Right. Yeah, and then you get to the point where you're like, you're working for a couple days straight, pretty much you leave your house, go to work, go back, sleep a little bit and come back, and you're like, did I take a shower today? Like, what did I do today? And they'll be like, oh, it's Thursday, and you're like, I was working since Monday. Like, what are you talking about? Like, so it's just like the concept of time with farming is kind of one of the craziest things too, because it's like, okay, like, what day is it? What time is it? What do we got to do?
What's the longest day you've worked?
Recently, about 2 hours. Just kidding. Jokes. Oh shoot, probably. We've had, like, last year we had a couple. If the weather's right, actually probably 2018 was probably one of the longer ones. We had some days, 14, 16 hours, and then we'd get done baling, probably get out there and start raking at about 4:30 in the morning, take a little break, start baling, get done at about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and go back about 2 or 3 the next morning. Do that for a couple days, and I mean, it's not too bad. I don't envy the people that do night shift and have to work, 12 hours on, 12 hours off, stuff like that. Like, no, those people, like, my wife is a saint. Like, managing that and trying to sleep during the day, I'm just like, I don't know how you do it.
That's a tough job.
Some days are long, some days are short. It all depends. I mean, it varies too. And that's the thing. I think that's the biggest thing is, like, people, I mean, going back to the comment about, oh, what's a weekend, or, can't you just take a day off? Well, yeah, but it's also like, it's our livelihood. So if we don't go now, we're not making money. And we're not making money, why are we even doing it? I mean, to be honest with you, it's fun, but we don't do it just for fun. Like, if you did it just for fun, what's the point?
Yeah.
I mean, if you had a bunch of money to blow, don't get me wrong, then it'd be fine. But pretty much every business, you want the business to succeed. So how do you do that? You put in the time and the effort and the hard work.
Sure, it would be a lot less stressful if money wasn't an object.
Oh yeah, if the bankroll is just rolling through, yeah.
That way, if you made a bad decision, it wouldn't be like, but I may lose the farm over this.
But on the contrary, though, even if it was, bankroll and you afforded it, when you start growing a crop and you get it down and it starts getting ruined, you're like,
yeah,
okay, now I'm losing money. Yeah. Because it's money. It's just like going to the casino. Same thing, right? It's like, oh, I won $400. And then you're like, oh, never mind. I just lost all of that $400 because I wanted to play for another 20 minutes. Like, it's the same kind of deal. It's like, it's all just kind of a big gamble and a crapshoot, for what's going on. You try everything in your power to get it done right, and then one thing comes through and ruins it.
So take us through the process, just in a nutshell, start to finish, how you make hay for people who aren't familiar with what hay, because hay is dried grass, or alfalfa, I guess. Alfalfa isn't technically a grass. It's what, a legume or something?
Yeah, it's a legume. So of course we'll take and we'll seed it.
Yep.
Water it, fertilize it, get it to grow. Typically we'll get it to about a stage where, hopefully, get it to a stage where it's all standing up nice.
How tall?
Kind of depends. Pretty much you try to get it in between bud and bloom stage for the most part, depending on what you're going for. And depending on what you want your cutting schedule to be. Because you could set your cutting schedule, but it all depends on what works for you. You know, some guys are 30 day, some guys are 32 day, 35 day. It all kind of depends. But typically you want it kind of before that bloom stage, because you kind of get a decent test out of it and stuff like that. So that's kind of where that's at.
So you go cut it.
We go cut it, let it sit there for a couple days, 3, 4, maybe 5 days, depends on the weather. And it's all grower preference too. Some people, and it all depends on the equipment too. Some guys run sickle headers on their windrowers. Some people run rotary headers with single conditioners, so it only crimps it in one spot.
So actually, like, kind of crimp the stem of the grass or alfalfa as it goes through.
Yeah. So of course, since it's a plant, you want it to get all the moisture out of it, right? So you'll take and you'll crimp it, and you'll take and pretty much squeeze the moisture out of it, and just break it and do that kind of stuff. Or we even have machines that have double conditioners, so it'll take and go through 2 sets of steel rollers that are chevron shaped. So it'll take and feed it through and crimp all the stems and stuff like that. And
so it kind of cracks them up a little bit so that the moisture can get out.
Yeah. So and it's all grower preference too. If you want to keep it tight, or if you want to keep it spread out, or anything like that. So we'll lay it out flat. On the outside, when you're looking at a field and you drive by it and it's about ready to be raked and it's bleached across the top, and you're like, wow, that stuff looks terrible. Like, what are they doing? As soon as it's raked up, it's nice and green underneath, for the most part, depending on how long it's sat there.
So more color in the hay, the dry hay, even though it's dried out, it still has color in it. That shows there's more nutrients in it for the animals that are going to eat it?
No, that all depends on the test at the end.
Yeah.
When you take and do that. But it's just the thing you want is you want those stems to be dry. When you go to bale it, you want those stems to be dry, because if they're not dry and they get in the bale, they'll start probing, say, 15 to 20% moisture, 30% moisture, and then you run into heating up, so it could combust.
How does that happen?
That's just natural process. It sits and it's packed all together, so it'll start kind of heating up and combusting, start making mold, and then it'll just kind of start creeping all the way out. If it's baled too wet, it'll combust. It's just because it sit there in that heat.
It's so counterintuitive. You think if it's wetter, but I mean, I know that from when I was a little kid. I remember my grandpa had a barn fire from some hay that was baled too wet.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So typically for us, we try to shoot for, depending on what it is, grass, we try to get kind of a little drier. So whether it's 6 to 8% moisture in the bale, then that's about right. But there's ways to tell too. So like with the alfalfa especially, you can sit there and scrape stems, and if it scrapes off in your hand, it's too wet. So stem moisture is, of course, the biggest thing. There's a difference between stem moisture and dew moisture. So stem moisture, you're probably not going to be able to get stem moisture, to dry out in the bale. Dew moisture, a little bit, depending on how much dew there is. If it's a heavy dew, if it's a heavy soaker, it's like it just took a shower, then it's probably too wet. If there's a little bit of dew to help retain those leaves and everything on it that give the best feed value, then that's kind of what you shoot for. So typically with alfalfa, export percentage is anything 12% or less, then that's exportable.
So do you want it as dry as possible, or is there such thing as too dry?
Too dry. There's such a thing as too dry.
Why is that bad if hay gets too dry? Because this is all like a curing process, right? Like,
yeah.
Technically it's drying, but also like actually locking in the good stuff in the grass for the animal to eat.
Yeah, so if it's too dry, it's pretty much just turns into sticks. All the leaves are knocked off of it. There's nothing to hold that leaf on the plant, so it disappears. You lose that leaf, and so it's all just kind of sticky. It kind of seems like straw. Same thing. So you can bale it too dry for sure. And then, a couple other things is just like, we got some tractors pulling in, so that's always exciting.
I think this is the tractor that does the next step in the process that we're describing here.
For grass, yeah. For alfalfa, we'll typically take and so once going back to it, once.
Oh yeah, we were talking alfalfa.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. We'll get to grass in a minute. That's a whole different beast itself. So typically it'll lay there. We'll rake it up and put it together, and then take and bale it, and take the stack wagon, pick up the bales, and put it in a stack in the corner, and hopefully somebody comes and buys it. So it's all a challenge. Every step of the process is kind of a challenge. Getting it going and making it is a challenge, but also getting it sold is another challenge. So, and then grass, that's a whole different beast. Completely different beast. Is, alfalfa, I hate to say it because some people don't like it when I say it, but I'm going to say it anyway, is the fact that you can kind of neglect alfalfa and it probably will still turn out decent.
Yeah.
Grass, it'll let you know when you mess up. And even if you look at it wrong, it'll let you know. Like, you can sit there and be like, oh yeah, that stuff looks good. The next day you come by and you'll be like, oh, never mind. Like, thanks,
So what happens?
Grass, typically, if you under-apply fertilizer, it's very responsive to it. So it'll brown out. It'll look kind of sick, lighter color, things like that. Or when you go to bale it and it happens to be too wet, then, you're kind of hosed there. Because even with Timothy, so the Timothy plant itself, they're 18 to 20 inches tall, at least, depending on what variety and all that kind of stuff. Plus growth stage and when you want to cut it. So the knuckles on it are what holds the most moisture in the stem. So if your knuckles aren't dry, then you're going to be having a problem. So you try to get those knuckles as dry as you can, and then bale it up. And we've even seen where, especially with grass, you start baling it and you're like, oh, the moisture is good. It's like 8%. Well, if the stems aren't completely cured the next day, I guarantee it'll probe double. It can probe 15 to 16%.
Wow.
Within a day. There's a sweating process. So, you got to kind of factor in for that. But
so what's the point of making hay, whether it's alfalfa or grass? Why don't they just feed the green stuff? It's basically to be able to store it. It's super old-fashioned process, right?
Yeah, it's a storage technique, pretty much, for the transportation. So, you can do silage. You can do, you can chop alfalfa. They do it all the time. Problem is you're hauling a lot of water. It's not economical to take it to the dairy when you're paying for a bunch of water. That's the nice thing about dry hay is you're paying for actual feedable product. You're not paying for water that you're never going to use.
Well, and I've had it explained to me, even here on this podcast. We were talking with Larry Stapp, a dairy farmer back in Western Washington, and he talks about, people asking whether or not his cows are grass-fed. And he says, well, sure they are, but what do you think we feed them in the wintertime when they can't be out eating grass in the field and it's just mud and rain or snow?
Yeah.
Well, that's hay or silage.
Yeah.
So this is,
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is like it's a product that could be used at any time. That's the nice thing is. Plus the other thing is if we just chopped it, we have a limit on our customers, right?
Yeah.
So that's the nice thing.
You can't ship it across the globe that way, right?
Well, you could. You're just not going to make anything, and
Yeah.
you're probably not going to want it and pay what you want. It's not going to be it's not going to be feasible. So, there's always a possibility for everything, but it's not completely feasible in an economic sense. So, and that's the biggest thing is, we can take, the nice thing about, especially here in Eastern Washington, is the fact that we can take and stack it up in a corner, stack it in a stack yard, put a tarp over the top. 8 months later, when they get, say 8 months later, when snow starts flying, they can come grab it. Guess what? It still has the same feed value as it did, within a few little, caveats, but it's the same no matter what.
Do you love it? Farming, making hay.
I enjoy it.
Battling the weather.
I enjoy it. I think I've kind of diversified, not really diversified. I've got a bunch of different fish in the fryer, so to speak. So I actually, I like it because I can actually show, especially through social media and then just stuff I'm doing every day, like I can show what I'm doing. I can show the interesting side of farming. I can show kind of what we do and what I find interesting. You know, like even like I stated in that video, and I've talked to a couple other people on social media, they're like, I don't know what to post. Like, what do I show? Everything I show is boring. And I go,
Yeah.
it's boring to you,
Because you do it every day.
but it's
Yeah.
probably not boring to somebody else. Or
Yeah.
the other things it does one of two things. It shows, hey, wow, that's kind of cool. I never knew that. I want to learn more. Or B, hey, here's another way to think about it. Like, have you tried this or have you done that? Or, you know, it even does a third thing where, can I come see how that works? Like,
Yeah.
I want to come and do that. Can I just come by? Yeah, you can come by anytime. You know, I mean, as long as you know you're civil and you're not trying to, you know, oh, GMOs are bad. Oh, you know,
Right.
this and that. You're not going to start a little, you know, protest. It might be a little bit of a buzzword there.
Yeah.
But you know, come out, see what we do.
Yeah, and that's for a lot of people who aren't around farming. That's what they know is they know the like controversy points.
Right.
And yeah, we can all talk about that and the pros and cons, and everybody will take their positions. But you have a job to do every day.
Yeah.
And it's not just all about the controversial social media talking points.
No, and I think that's the thing is like I think I've got to the point where I like showing what we're doing. You know, some things, of course, I'm not going to show. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not going to show you my books. I'm not going to show you
Yeah.
my,
Well, that's
you know,
shouldn't be
things like that. Yeah, but even I even have, I mean, kind of going off on another rant apparently, just in my head right now is like, some people don't like to tell how many acres they farm.
Yeah.
I get it. You don't want to sound like you're, you know, woo, you know,
Yeah.
some big old, you know, thing. But at the same time, who cares? If somebody asks me, hey, how many acres do you farm? I'll tell you.
Yeah.
It's not a big head thing. It's you can be 10 acres or you can have 10,000 acres. It doesn't really matter. How you handle yourself shows everything about who you are. You know, if you're 10,000 acres and you act like you have 10,000 acres and you're better than the 10-acre farmer, then why? But everybody's the same.
Some people feel like though the 10,000 acre farm can't be good because it's so huge, it's unmanageable, and it's lost touch kind of with the human element. Is that true?
I'm going to put a little disclaimer in there and say it depends. It depends on who the farm is and what the farm is. But at the end of the day, we all have one goal, right? We want to grow something for the world. I mean, real food, real people, right? we want to grow something that makes a difference.
Yep.
We're not here to harm the environment. We're not here to, you know, sway people and say, oh, you know, you're going to buy from our big corporate farm. Like, no. Everybody that works for that farm that makes it what it is a human. They do those things. Like they're there. Are they making money? Sure, but it's a business. So is everything else in this world.
Well, sometimes they're making money.
Sometimes.
Sometimes they're losing money. Back to your casino analogy.
Yeah, sometimes. But I think that's the biggest thing is like, you know, and some people are like, oh man, you know, you spend a lot of time on social media, or you spend a lot of time making like marketing materials and things like that. I go, yeah, it's because that's what I like to do. But at the same time, it's not to make it seem like farming is just this small little, like I said earlier, grow the crops. Yeah. You know, it's not just a bunch of backwoods people. Like it's people, you know. And I think that's the thing about farmers is the fact that you have to take and be an accountant, be a banker, be you know, stuff like that. I mean, you know, you got to be everything in order to make it work. So I think that's kind of the, you know, the biggest thing is it's not just somebody sitting there, you know, in a tractor. It's not just a butt in a seat. It's if you're going to be a grower and you're going to be a farmer, you got to know how to do a wide range of things. So
what do you think people should know about what happens with growing their food, or I guess in this case, food for their food, which is what you guys do, right? Grow hay for a beef animal or a dairy animal that's going to produce what they eat, one step removed. But regardless, people are concerned about where their food comes from and Who are the people behind it?
I think they need to know that, like, we try our best to not... We try everything to get the product to be the best that it can be for, you know, for their animal or things like that. Like, we do put herbicides down. We put fungicides down. We put all this other stuff. But they're not harmful if they're used in the correct way. We follow labels. We consult with our agronomists. We consult with our buyers and things like that. Like, we're not doing anything intentionally to hurt an animal. So another thing with alfalfa, too, that can be a problem is if the nitrate levels are too high. So, you know, nitrates are toxic to cows if they're above a certain level. We pay attention to those. So if we have a stack that tests high nitrates, we're going to be like, hey, I wouldn't feed it to.
Right.
I wouldn't feed it to your cows. Or I wouldn't feed it to this, or I wouldn't feed it to that. Or in small amounts. Like, we're not intentionally going through and trying to cause issues or, like I said, ruin the environment or anything like that. Like, we're actually pretty good stewards of the land, whether we do no-till or the fact that, especially for us, all our forages are perennials. They come back every year. We don't have to work the ground. We don't have to do anything like that. Like, it's there. We plant it once. We run it for 3, 4, 5 years. We even have a Timothy stand that's 12 years old, and we've never worked the ground. And that's the thing is we're conserving topsoil, we're conserving nutrients, we're conserving, you know, a whole bunch of other stuff, and, you know, we're doing less. We're doing less but producing more. And I think that's the biggest thing right now, especially is like, you know, everybody's like, oh, you know, there's not enough crop or this or that. Well, we're producing more on a smaller amount due to herbicides, fungicides, all these chemicals that you're saying, oh, well, they're terrible. They're bad for you if you use them in the wrong way, but we're getting more out of less. And it's not, you know, it's not causing really too many issues.
How important is soil health to the way you guys farm?
Soil health is huge. If we don't have soil health, we don't have a crop, right? So that's the biggest thing is like soil health is probably one of the most important things that we deal with. Yeah, we can grow a crop, but if the soil's not right, we're not doing ourselves any favors. We're not doing the ground any favors. So, you know, there's a certain point, of course, that your return on investment for fertilizers or things like that, there comes a point where you're not going to be making any money. But if you can build up all that, then you're in a good spot. You can take and you'll grow the crop and you keep giving it back, then it'll keep growing a crop for you. You know, you can sit and mine it out. You could, you know, on lease contracts, you know, sometimes people take and mine out all the nutrients and don't put them back. And then so the next grower has to come along or the landowner has to come along and try to build the soil back up where it was, and it ends up costing an arm and a leg to do it. So soil health is huge.
So it sounds like that's not your philosophy to just take the nutrients that are there and run.
No, I mean,
It has to be more sustainable than that.
I will say sometimes it does happen. I mean, and it's not on purpose. It's not like, you know, we say, oh, we're just gonna, you know, screw this guy over. Like that's not our mantra. The biggest thing is getting it to produce where we can grow a sustainable crop on it and make money. And that's the thing, or try to make money. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
You know, so I think, it's a toss-up too, because how much is too much, and what is not enough. You know, so where's that happy medium? Where can we be that we give back enough, but we also you know, keep our costs in check. And can make it back with the crop that we're growing for the stuff we're putting in. So I think, I mean, soil's the basic thing that a plant needs to grow. I mean, one of the most important pieces, of course.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't have a hospitable place to live, it's not going to grow and you're not going to be happy.
R&H Farms, what does that stand for?
Really nice hay.
Really?
Yeah. Or for 2020, it's really nasty hay. No, I'm just kidding. So when we first started, it was actually it was rock and hay. So we have a lot of rocks and we grow hay, so it was rock and hay.
But it sounds like rocks in the hay.
You got it.
When you say that.
You got it. So we had some customers come back and say, yeah, is there rocks in the hay? And I'm going, no. So, we shortened it. We're like R&H Farms. Like, and we just kind of came up with the joke, like really nice hay, and depending on the year, really nasty hay, right? So I always tell people that. I'm like, yeah, really nice hay. So it could be. It's double meaning, but we kind of got away from the rock and hay because it just
rock N as in like it's rockin'. Like you rock this hay.
It's like ROCK, the letter N apostrophe HAY. Like,
got it.
So literally, like for a culture that is a direct, like they hear something and it's a direct translation, like it's straightforward.
That's
and
true,
cut and
because
dry.
you're having people buy this from speaking all different languages across the globe, and they're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, direct translation is like, rock and hay. Oh, well, there's rocks in it? No. We hope not. But no, like the portion that we live in is very there's a lot of calcium deposits. We'll just say that. No, there's a lot of rocks, and we've picked our fair share amount of rocks to get it to be farmable. Yeah. So that was kind of the first initial one that came up with, and then we've phased that out into R&H Farms. Yeah. So and we're working towards more and more. We're working towards more and more kind of advocacy for what we do and kind of our brand. I mean, people are like, oh, why do you spend, like we kind of talked about, why do you spend so much money on, marketing materials or hats or, stuff like that? I go, because it's a brand that, I want to grow. That's the thing. It's like, it's a brand that I'm proud of. So let's grow it.
It stands for something.
Yeah. It means something to me. So where can I take that? Like, what can I make that into? And I think that's kind of the marketing advertising side of, my background is it's taking something and how do we build it? How do we build it up? How do we grow it? And it's not just grow it just for the publicity. It's not just grow it for anything like that, but it's a recognizable thing. And like I said earlier, is like some of the overseas buyers are like, we want to see R&H Farms first. Do they have any good stuff? Like, we know that they make good stuff. And it's just a sense of pride. Like it gets you to kind of bubble up inside and be like, yeah, we made that. And then, sometimes we got to tell them, no, guess not. Like, we don't have anything probably. But, the biggest thing, especially with the agricultural community, is the fact that, like, it's built on relationships. And that's the thing. And I think that's one of the other things that I enjoy the most is it's relationships. It's building that community and building that brain trust for what we got going on. So you can pull from different places and be like, okay, well, this worked for him. Let's tweak it a little bit, and then we'll try it. Or, no, we're never going to do that again because it has never worked and this and that. The old mentality, the old farmer mentality is the fact that I tried it once 25 years ago. It didn't work, so I'm never trying it again.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And I get it. Everybody gets comfortable. It goes back to talking about being, inside a comfort zone.
Well, but if you tried it that way 25 years ago and lost your shorts on it, you'd have a lot of motivation to not do that again.
Right.
But you got to keep an open mind.
But, yeah, and that's the thing is, like, agriculture is constantly evolving, right? And one thing about agriculture that is kind of interesting is the fact that tech is in agriculture, but it's about 4 or 5 years behind where tech is everywhere else. Grain, and stuff like that, technology is through the roof. For forages, it's there, but it's not as prominent. So that's
why
the
is
thing.
that?
I don't know. I don't know if it's just the fact that, like, forages are kind of the redheaded stepchild. I mean, I hate to do that little, analogy, but I mean, that's kind of how it is like, it's just kind of the back seat. But interestingly enough, so alfalfa is the number 3 top grossing product in the world behind wheat and corn. It's like, okay, well, why are we not getting more recognition, right? And if you actually look, so the National Alfalfa and Forage Alliance puts together a thing. So the big 5, so wheat, corn, soybeans, I think like a tree fruit and something else, and then alfalfa. Out of those, the research funding for alfalfa is 1/5 the size of that for wheat, corn, and soybeans. It's like, why? We're up here, like our,
We need to get on that here in the state. Washington is full of tech.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Hey, if anybody in Seattle who's in tech is listening and is looking for an opportunity where they could really be a game changer, believe it or not, it could be in farming. Well, I probably a lot of people in that world don't necessarily think of farming, just like a lot of farmers don't necessarily think about tech.
Right. And I think that's also one of the biggest, challenges too, is especially in like a smaller community, is like, people always question us like, well, why do you use GPS in your swathers? You can't just sit there and drive? I go, we could. But I go, I've cut down, even on our machines, we've cut down probably an hour or two at least of cutting time because we're using GPS.
Yeah. How much fuel does that save then, too?
A whole lot. Probably, 12 to 15 gallons an hour per machine.
Yep.
So here we are. Operator fatigue goes down. The amount of money that you pay for labor, fuel, equipment costs, hours of depreciation on that piece of equipment. Yep. Like, there's a whole bunch of factors, and it's like the investment for it, sure, it's a little costly up front, but you start spreading that out and you're like, I got to figure it out.
It's worth it.
It's worth it for sure. And so
it's not just a cool thing to make sure your rows are perfectly straight.
Right, which, in
you guys
in all honesty,
you're in circles.
We're in circles, but still, it's a whole lot different when you look at, even when our guys go to a field and they're like, hey, did somebody not cut this with GPS? And I go, no. They got to sit there and kind of go back and forth. But,
I planted corn through college. That's how I paid my way through my university degree. And doggone it, I could plant some straight rows.
That's right. Yeah.
I'd give those GPS guys a run for their money.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. I was gonna say. All right. Let's see what you got.
I've run GPS tractor enough a few times to know that. No.
Well, you can come out here again. We'll have a part 2 of this from the cab, and we'll see how you do. No, I think that's the biggest thing, is like there's a little bit of a disconnect between tech and ag overall as a whole, for forages especially. I don't know if it's just because there's not a big push. So I don't know if there's just a bunch of smaller growers, that are like, oh, I don't want to adopt tech, or I don't want to do this, or I don't want to cater to big tech. Well, guess what? Like, you're gonna have to get it. I go, do you have an iPhone in your pocket?
Yeah.
Well, then guess what? You're already there. Like, they know everything about you, so it really don't matter. Like, so I think there's gonna be a shift here in the next little while. That tech is gonna be a bigger part. I just don't know in what capacity.
I remember a couple years ago, Knut Berger with Crosscut in Seattle, and KCTS Public Television came up to do an article on some farms in Whatcom County. So I met with him, and we were hanging out, and I was taking him around to some farms, and that was the thing that he said once he saw the robotic milkers that dairies were using, and some of the GPS stuff and things that they were doing on like improving potato varieties and things like that, because they do seed potatoes back there. And he's like, there needs to be more of a nexus between all of our tech community in Seattle, in the city, and what you guys are doing in farming. So he was saying exactly the same thing.
But on the other hand, though, I'm wondering if it all comes down to money, right?
It costs money.
That's
and it's not like farming is high margin kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, no, we just make. I'm gonna go home and hop in my Lexus. And Lexus. Anyway, my expenses say that's how out of touch it is. Yeah. But I think it's all. It's all driven by money, of course. So you probably be able to do it eventually, but when's it going to happen? There's a lot of tech coming out that we could talk about, that I know a little bit about, that product guys know a little bit about, but it's going to be a little bit before it gets here.
Yeah,
it's not going to be here, instantly. It takes time. I get it. Even we work with a software company that we keep track of all our stuff and inputs, outputs, contracts, all this stuff. People are a little, uptight about that kind of situation too, is like, oh, you're working with them. Like, it's costing you a whole bunch of money. Yeah, but guess what? It makes my workflow easier. Mm-hmm. And it gives me all my data that I want. Like, I'm kind of just a data nerd. Mm-hmm. So like, I'll be like, oh yeah, I like,
Oh, then you
numbers.
can actually know what works and what doesn't.
Right.
Based on changing your practices.
Right.